Morning, everybody. So welcome to today's topic. So today's topic is the Buddha's teaching on speech. So basically, the Buddha's teaching on speech have these different qualities. Oops, can't read it. Truthfulness, helpfulness, kind speech, and harmonious speech. So what I'm going to look at is things like how that relates to something like polemic. So the polemic is actually a polemical speech, like the left versus the right, or whatever it is, or religion versus science, or something. The word polemic comes from the Greek polemos, which means war. How I think how this came up was on Tuesday, the session I did on Tuesday. I talked about the whole thing of sorry, my brain's a bit addled. UK Health Service, the professor who in charge of the AstraZeneca vaccine program, was saying that he's saying that he thought the NHS could probably vaccinate everybody in 5 days if it wanted to, and then some people from NHS said, well, no, we haven't got enough vaccine, but he said it was to do with bureaucracy, so it's like I think there's a lot of fear around about speaking out, or because we don't really want to put people offside, so it's it's the people in the NHS or in government are kind of at the sharp end of everything, so they're having to deal with the reality, really. So it can seem a bit like better not say anything, because they're doing a lot of the work, or whatever it is, or how do you address issues that you're kind of concerned about, So so I'm just going to explore a bit around what the Buddha might do in that situation. Kind of also for my own benefit, really, because you don't want to be upsetting people, but also you don't want the truth to not be coming through, like if it is true that things aren't, there's some reason why things aren't functioning very well. It'd be good to know that, So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm blurring a bit here. Okay, so we'll begin as usual with some body work and meditation, and then get on to the topic. Okay, so let's begin by just turning into an angle, and then just swing your arms backwards and forwards. So trying to do this with awareness. So one of the things what that means is you're not kind of, your mind is together with your body. So it's not like your mind is just going, oh, when's this going to end? Kind of like not paying attention, like bored and indifferent, and you're just doing something because you feel like you have to. What we're trying to do is to have our mind kind of looking out for a particular outcome and acting accordingly with that, so if this exercise is bringing about a freeing up of tension in your back or vitality in your spine or relaxation in your stomach, whatever it is, then knowing that is a good thing. And if it isn't doing that, if do you need to do something slightly different, which will do that? So you kind of there's a purpose behind this. You're taking responsibility for, your body and its effect on your mind. Because mind and body are interconnected. So it's quite interesting last night, actually. I had quite a good day yesterday of achieving things, kind of trying to keep myself on point to what do I need to do. And I sorted out my website redirection thing, so that's all good. And other things. I had a pretty good day, and then I had trouble sleeping at the moment. And I was heading into a night of poor sleep. But I just got a hot water bottle and made it quite full and put it on my back and just kept moving it around my body. And it was very hot and it was like, ouch. And I just kept doing that. And I didn't sleep massively well, but this morning I feel so, I don't know, freed up in my body, quite different to how it's been for a while, really. So, we just keep plugging away at trying different things. Until something works. And then we try and mindfulness partly is about trying to remember about what works and keep doing it. Because our mind naturally just drifts off, forgets things. Okay. All right. So put the other foot forward and go to the other side, the other angle. So what do you notice that's different on this side? So that you've got a different view now. And tuning into how you're feeling at the moment. How do you feel about this different view? What you're looking at? Is the way that your body is moving and feeling different on this side to the other side? And I can feel more resistance actually on this side. I really need to sort of go a bit slower or something on this side because there's more resistance. aware of feeling of the air brushing against your skin as you're moving your hands. Feeling of the contact of feet with the ground. How you are emotionally, are you feeling relaxed and at ease, or is there some element of fear and anxiety there? So whatever's going on, just acknowledging it. Without a judgment. And yeah, so you're trying to have your body do this, like just backwards and forwards in a kind of horizontal axis. At the end of each swing, your arms just go their own way. Right, so now just rotate your hips again, just keep mind and body in the same place. One's not ahead of the other. Leaning back and then to one side, forwards, to one side. And then twisting, hold it. And then twist and hold on the other side. And shake everything out, hands and feet. Get into your collarbone a bit. And kidneys at the back there. And buttocks. Brushing off body. With your hand. Palm. Of the back of your hand. Palm. Deeper breaths. And take a seat. So just get used to being in a different position. So this morning we're going to do the grounding meditation. Being aware of our situations. So closing your eyes. So we're just going to gradually and systematically bring some awareness to our situation. So what is that situation? So first of all, we're a human being who exists in time and space. So just first of all, being aware of time. All the moments that you've experienced in the past. Just waiting for it to dawn on you, that you have a past. If your mind's a bit busy, then just kind of imagine just putting your thoughts to one side for now while you do this simple exercise. Being aware of your situation. First about the situation in time. So all those moments of experience, varying experience, sometimes things go well, sometimes they don't go so well. But the one sort of constant factor is like time itself. Being aware of the future, so being aware that you have a future, hopefully. Imagining all the moments in the future. Right now you exist in a particular moment in time, which is the present moment. So just gradually let it dawn on you that this is the case, that here you are in the present moment. This is where your life is actually taking place. as well as existing in time, it's also the case that you exist in space. So you're sitting on the Earth, which is a huge, great ball of matter flying through space. And above your head is the atmosphere, which is about 10 miles thick. And beyond the atmosphere is that vast empty space. Where every now and then there might be an object like a star, planet, or galaxy, or a car sent up by Elon Musk. But not, those objects are there's very large distances between them. It's absolutely enormous as the universe. And the Earth is covered in land masses and oceans and ice caps, deserts and farmland, cities. And you're at a particular place on the Earth, in a particular building probably. So again, just arriving into an awareness of this is where you are. Just let it dawn on you that this is where you are. And it's also the case that you have a body. And that body is a physical object in the physical world. And it's got a particular structure to it. So it's got a skeleton to support the body's weight, and muscles to move the body about, and organs to keep it alive. So just tuning into the structure of your particular body. Try to notice where the bones are, where the muscles are, the organs. And rather than holding your body up through an act of will, just think that your body knows how to sit down. It doesn't need any help from your mind to do that. All you need to do is just kind of balance your spine so that it's vertical, so that your weight's going, you're not leaning over. So if you're leaning over, you're going to have to use tension on one side to hold your body up. So just concentrate on balancing your body. So if your spine is balanced, then the muscles of the body can feel confident that they can just let go. So just reflecting that that relaxation is a physical thing. It's just like unfurling a fist. So if your weight is taken by the skeleton, then there's no reason why you can't just unfurl any tension in the rest of your body. So beginning with the crown of your head, taking your attention up to the crown of your head. Can you imagine that the flesh on the crown of your head is becoming looser? Even that there's some space opening up between your skull and the flesh of your scalp. And relaxing in the forehead, just imagining that your brow is becoming smoothed out and loose. Just letting go of any tension around the temples. In the face, softening around the eyes and the nose. Letting go in the jaw, the back of the throat. And releasing in the back of the neck so that the head can be released upwards, crown of the head can move upwards. And at the same time, the back can release downwards. Just imagine a cascade of relaxation passing down the back. So the joint at the top of the spine, saying to yourself, may that joint be free to move, while inhibiting yourself from actually doing anything about it. Just having that thought, may it be free to move so that your head can rise up towards the ceiling with a minimum of effort, so that your neck can release and your back can become longer and wider. May your shoulders be free to move, so your arms can move away from your shoulders, lengthening. Again, not doing anything about it, just having that thought, suggestion. May my elbows be free to move, so my forearms can move away from my elbows, lengthening. May my wrists be free to move, so my hands can extend away from my wrists, lengthening. May the joints of my fingers be free to move, so my fingers can move away from my hands, lengthening. Imagining a line running between my left shoulder and my right knee. Just having the thought, may the length of that line become longer, without doing anything about it. That's the left shoulder and the right knee. May the line become longer. And then same on the other side, line between the right shoulder and the left knee. May the length of that line become longer. May my hip joints be free to move, so that my legs can extend away from my hips, lengthening. Again, don't do anything about it. Just have the thought. May my knees be free to move, so that my lower legs can move away from my knees, lengthening. May my ankles be free to move, so my feet can move away from my ankles, lengthening. May the joints in my toes be free to move, so my toes can move away from my feet, lengthening. Oh yeah, sorry, excuse me. So in your own time, just bringing your meditation to a close. Okay. So, as I was saying in the introduction, I kind of tried to address the sort of issue on in my last session on what was the topic again? Well, it was about science and moral responsibility last session, and I think I was just kind of wondering out loud, whether or not people were kind of putting so much. There's such a lot of emphasis on science that to solve the problem of the pandemic and everything. That it's almost like it can feel a little bit kind of tyrannical or something, like it can sort of dominate things really sometimes. I mean, just thinking about people at the end of life. This is before the pandemic. How there's this on the one hand, medicine there's a drive to keep the body alive. Keep the body functioning. And then on the other hand, there's like, well, what does the individual person want for their life? So it might be that the person who's dying actually doesn't want to be just kept alive at all costs and actually wants to go home and spend a bit of time in familiar surroundings. So I think sometimes I suppose there is a real issue here around in a way sort of decision making and kind of morality, which is about what's going to bring happiness for living beings, and say kind of things like science, for instance, and yeah. So what I've noticed is that there can be a bit of a polemic going on around. Well, you have it in. So where I looked at polemic, it says a polemic is contentious rhetoric that is intended to support a specific position by forthright claims and undermining of the opposing position. Polemics are mostly seen in arguments about controversial topics. So it gives an example of Richard Dawkins' God delusion as a part of the polemic tradition. So yeah, and as I said, the word polemic derives from the Greek polemikos, warlike, hostile, or polemos, war. So what obviously, from what you probably know about Buddhism, it avoids things like war at all costs. It's not about hatred doesn't cease by hatred. Hatred only ceases by love. That's the Buddha quote from the Buddha. So what's what is the Buddhist response in terms of speech? What do you replace a polemic with? Okay, sorry, my brain's a bit addled really this morning. Sorry, I'll just have to do the best I can. So there's a Buddhist scripture called the Abhaya Raja Kumara Sutra, which means to Prince Abhaya. And it goes, thus have I heard. So they always begin with, thus have I heard. At one occasion, the Blessed One, that's the Buddha, was living at Rajgriha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Then Prince Abhaya went to the Nigantha Nataputta. So this is the leader of the Jains, I think. And having paid homage to him, sat down at one side. Thereupon, so he's basically a rival of the Buddha, Nigantha Nataputta. Thereupon, Nigantha Nataputta said to him, "Come, Prince, refute the recluse Gautama," that's the Buddha. Refute the recluse Gautama's doctrine, and a good report of you will be spread to this effect. Prince Abhaya has refuted the doctrine of the recluse Gautama, who's so powerful and mighty. So it's like the Buddha had this kind of quite a fearsome sort of reputation in debate, that he just kind of seemed to sort of win all the time, because of his, I suppose, the power of his personality as an enlightened being, So Prince Abhaya says, "But how, Venerable Sir, shall I refute his doctrine?" So he says, "Go to Gautama and say, would the Tathagata, that's the Buddha, utter speech that would be unwelcome and disagreeable to others? If he answered, if the Buddha says yes, then say, well, what's the difference between you and an ordinary person? For an ordinary person would utter speech that would be unwelcome and disagreeable to others." So it's saying, does the Buddha ever say anything that people don't like? And he says, but if the recluse Gautama, on being asked thus, answers he wouldn't do that, then say to him, well, why have you said of Devadatta? So Devadatta was somebody who's kind of a bit out to undermine the Buddha, and the Buddha says he's destined for states of hell. So that was displeasing to Devadatta, So he's kind of he's saying to him, ask him this question, and he's going to undermine himself whichever one he says. He won't be able to gulp it down or throw it up. So anyway, so Prince Abhaya went to see the Buddha, and he asked him the question, and the Buddha says there's no one-sided answer to this. It's like, it's not as simple as that. Do you always say things that are pleasant to people, or and then so what Prince Abhaya says is that then Venerable Sir, the Niganthas have lost in this. So it's like he's kind of, he knows that the Buddha's kind of won out over the other guy, over the Jain leader. So it says that on that occasion, a young tender infant was lying down prone on Prince Abhaya's lap. And the Blessed One said to him, "What do you think, Prince? If while you or your nurse were not attending to this child, he were to put a pebble or stick in his mouth, what would you do to him?" So basically, if the child were to sort of swallow something, what would you do? And the prince says, "Well, I'd take it out, and if I couldn't take it out at once, I'd take his head and he'd kind of basically, give him a, hit his back and try and get it out, even if it meant drawing blood." Why is that? Because I have compassion for the child. So it's like using force. He's agreeing that sometimes you need to use force if it avoids a greater harm. And so what the Buddha does is it responds with his own teaching on speech. He says, such speech that the Buddha knows to be untrue, incorrect, unbeneficial, and also unwelcome and disagreeable to others, he doesn't say that. He doesn't speak. So if it's untrue, so basically he goes through a list. So this is the list here. You can see that. So if something is not true, it's not helpful, it's not endearing to the other person, and it's not agreeable to the other person, the Buddha doesn't say it. Okay. If it's true, it's not helpful, it's not endearing, and it's not agreeable to the other person, he doesn't say it. So truth on its own is not enough, for the Buddha. If it's true, if it's helpful, but it isn't endearing or agreeable, so it's like the other person doesn't want to hear it, the Buddha would say it, but only in a timely manner, like when it's the right time, when it's the right time and place to say that. If it's not true, if it's not helpful, but if it's endearing and agreeable to the other person, if the other person likes it, then he wouldn't say it. So the Buddha would never say something just to please the other person if it wasn't true or helpful. If it's true but not helpful, but endearing and agreeable to the person, the Buddha wouldn't say it. So he wouldn't say it if it's not helpful. And if it's true, helpful, endearing, and agreeable to the person, he would still only say it if it was at the right time, if it was a timely manner. So, to summarise that, if something's untrue, the Buddha would never say it. If it's unhelpful, even though it might be true, the Buddha would never say it. If it's unendearing, the Buddha would say it. So, if the person doesn't want to hear it, if it's unpleasant for the person to hear, the Buddha would say it if it was true, helpful, and if it was the right time to say it. If it's not agreeable to the other person, same thing, the Buddha would say if it was true, helpful, and the right time to say it. So I think that's really kind of interesting. It's like the important point is that we're dealing with the Buddha is dealing with human beings, and so it's got to be the person has got to be ready to hear something, and I know that Sangharakshita is sort of sometimes, my teacher, he might have thought, oh, this person needs to hear something, but he's just been aware that it's, they couldn't really take it, if he said it, it would be too much for them or something like that, and yeah. So I think sometimes when you've got a kind of relationship between, the Buddhist tradition has a lot of examples of a guru and a disciple relationship, and particularly in the Tibetan tradition, because everything is so heavily kind of symbolic, or kind of couched in sort of symbolic terms, that what you do there with your guru, your teacher, is that you act as if they are the Buddha, so you kind of you're supposed to sort of do everything that they say, and in the Zen tradition, you get this, and people, I think one guy cut his arm off, as a way of proving that he was what a disciple he was, and but you can only do anything like that, like really sort of sacrifice your own, your own interests or something. If the relationship is real, if you really sort of trust your your guru, your teacher, you can. It only really works if just doing exactly what your guru says. If if you're making that as a kind of complete, like, free choice, it's like a methodology, really, to help yourself get beyond the patterns that you have, Sorry, I got a bit lost here. So I'm going to just kind of play a recording of one of my friends in the order, Ratnaprabha, talking about loving speech, and he brings in the thinking of a guy called Martin Buber. So we're just going to listen to this.
Now, in a way, it's very easy to define loving speech, but it may not be exactly what you would expect. You'd think loving speech means speech expressed with love, yeah, which is sort of fair enough, but really that's not a proper Buddhist definition of it. A proper Buddhist definition of it is that it's communication with awareness of who you are communicating with. Communication with awareness of who you're communicating with. And this reminded me of the teaching of Martin Buber, who was a Jewish philosopher of the last century. And you may or may not have come across this, and I'm not all that familiar with it, so I apologize if it's a bit superficial what I say. But he talks about communication, in particular he talks about relationships. And he says there are two main kinds of relationships. And one of them he calls the I-it relationship. And one of them he calls the I-thou relationship. Of course, he says this in German. And so ich-du relationship. So the I-it relationship is where whatever you're relating to is seen as effectively an inanimate thing, which we engage with because it's useful to us. It's an object, in other words, and we ignore it if it's not useful or not interesting to us. And of course, that's maybe when we're relating to our router at home, which isn't functioning. Maybe that's fair enough to regard the router as being an it, as a thing, which is either useful or completely useless. But we do this also with people. Often we will relate to people as its. And Martin Buber's suggestion is that the cultural norm nowadays in Western society is for most relationships to be I-it relationships, where it's to do with our own needs, getting our own needs from people. And that objectification, seeing the other as an object, obviously reaches its extreme form, say, in the kind of objectification that you get where a man is either harassing or even assaulting women just because of his sexual interest in them. In other words, he's seeing them purely as sexual objects. But I don't think it would be fair just to say this is only an issue with men. I think it's an issue with all of us that we do sometimes treat each other as objects. Maybe even usually we treat each other as objects. We objectify each other. And I think that to get to the next level, the Martin Buber's I-thou relationship is quite a big step. I'm sure it does happen sometimes with all of us. But for it to happen in every encounter, I think would be quite a thing to ask, quite a major thing to ask, maybe even impossible, I'm not sure. So I and thou is when there's a genuine exchange, an actual relationship that goes both ways with the person we encounter. But it's more than that. There's also a recognition of the other as an amazing, complete universe in themselves, a complete human being, someone who really matters. So similarly, loving communication in Buddhism is not just a question of being nice or being sugary or being affectionate or being endearing or being complimentary and just saying nice things. It doesn't mean being pleasant and avoiding difficult issues. And this maybe starts to resolve the conflict between kind speech and truthful speech when you realize that it's not always kind to avoid difficult issues. What it means is communicating with as much awareness of the other as you can find. Then there's a real personal connection, an I-thou connection. Now, although loving speech is not just about being pleasant, nevertheless, I do think one can underestimate the importance of pleasantness. Do be considerate. It's really worth being considerate. It's really worth being polite. It's really worth not being pushy, and it's really worth not being harsh.
Okay, yeah. So it's quite interesting, though, isn't it? That how would we bring Martin Buber's teaching of I-thou rather than I-it into relationship with, say, your polemic, So, here's the left and the right. Imagine this in America, So you'd have to. There'd have to be a kind of not. So when you're sort of trying to leverage opinion, by arguing that this person is wrong or this person is, being unskillful, through kind of indirect through other people, you're trying to get public opinion on your side. By definition, what you're not doing is talking directly to the person. You're not talking to them as a thou. So, and you're not listening to them as a thou. You're kind of avoiding that. Yes, I think the Buddhist speech precepts, in a way, a bit like what Ratnaprabha was saying, it's like it kind of forces us into more kind of genuine relationship with people. That we have to actually say what the truth is. Even though somebody might not like it, so long as it is timely, so long as they can hear, as long as we have to say it at the right time for them to be able to hear. So I thought in relation to, say, if there are people in the NHS who aren't, who are being a bit bureaucratic in some way or other, and maybe, well, we're all not aware at various times. Our human awareness really comes and goes. So we can be a bit wrapped up in something, in one particular thing, and then and to the extent that we're ignoring other things that actually have a bearing on happiness and suffering for beings, then by definition we're adding to the suffering in the world, by neglect, But we're all doing this all the time, We're all kind of looking after our own interests, or only looking after a certain sort of area of life and stuff, and and we're forgetting, we're forgetting about other things, or we're just not aware this is even an issue, So it's awareness. While it's necessary, it's a hard thing, it's a hard thing to keep up, and that's why it's a practice. That's why Buddhists sit down and try and develop it on a regular basis, and try and develop loving kindness on a regular basis. It's not automatically there. So if we're seeing something in somebody else that, say, the professor said about bureaucracy in the NHS and holding back the vaccination rollout and all that. I suppose we have to ask ourselves, is this the right time? Can these people hear it? But what is it that helps people hear stuff? So it often isn't really that there's some sort of should in there, or if somebody says to me, I think you should do this, what people need from you is this, it's a bit like, whoa, I've got, it's like a pressure to immediately be doing that thing that I may or may not be able to do, But if somebody kind of comes to me and they are acting like I'm a thou, rather than an it, then, and I feel that's happening, if I feel that, they're treating me like a human being, and they're kind of asking me questions, and and sort of inviting me to be aware of something, then it's much easier for me to respond and go, oh yeah, oh thanks for pointing it out. That's like, I want to be helping people and not causing suffering. Yeah, thanks for making that suggestion or something, or I'm into that as well. So yeah, so it's about I suppose in a way, if loving kindness begins with ourselves, in a way, communication sort of begins with ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, and kind of, yeah, sort of being sort of self-aware of our own feelings about things, So if we kind of maybe if we want somebody else to be doing something, what the Buddhist tradition says is that the way that we build up sangha, we build up a community. So in a way, the way that we get other people to be following the Buddha's teachings, is through things like exemplifying that teaching. So we are kind, we are sort of thoughtful in the way we speak. We allow weakness, in ourselves and others. We're understanding. We sort of, we practice kind speech. So we towards ourselves and towards others. So we don't push anybody into stuff that without just without awareness of the person, and we try and work together with people rather than against. Sort of work try and sort of work, exemplifying this sort of working side by side. So we're kind of able to put ourselves in other people's positions. So the way in which anyone might get steered towards a better view of a better way of doing things would be like that. It'd be very sort of gentle, and it would be very relational. And in a way, it's that if we've built a relationship with people, then. And they know they're in a good relationship with us, then when it is the right time when we feel like they would be able to hear something, we can say it with the confidence that we've done absolutely everything we can to build up a relationship with them and to build trust in them, and we've helped them, resource them as much as possible to be able to, to hear that thing, that the truth, what's truthful and helpful. So yeah. So I suppose what we have to do is to stop being polemical, like speaking, to the crowd about other people. But what we can do is we can speak about ourselves and our own experience, So we can say, well, I find it really frustrating that, we've got all this technology and ability and, the things like the internet, which wasn't there like 30 years ago. All this would be a lot harder. We've got this capacity, but it's frustrating that somehow the organisation doesn't seem to be there that, why is it not why are things not happening? So we can say, yeah, well, that's quite painful to me when I sort of see people suffering, unnecessarily. Is there anything we can do about this? So I suppose beginning with myself, I can try and practice that sort of speech. And often I don't want to. I want to do the shortcut, which is like, oh yeah, point something out so other people can sort of rush in and sort of solve it. So it's about kind of putting the moral responsibility back on myself, to speak in those ways. And in that, in the sutra, the Buddha talks about. It talks in terms of truthfulness, helpfulness, whether it's in speech is endearing and agreeable. In another place, he talks about 4 ways of speech: truthful speech, speech that isn't divisive. So, that's speech that's harmonious among people. Speech that's not abusive, and speech that's not idle. So in a way, yeah. So in the Buddhist order that I'm a part of, we at ordination we take on 10 kind of ethical precepts or training principles, and 4 of them are to do with speech. And that they are, there's that, the kind of truthful speech, helpful speech, kind speech, and harmonious speech. So this is another way of looking at the same thing, really. Is it truthful? Is it helpful? Am I being kind rather than abusive? Am I being harmonious rather than divisive? So yeah. Okay, so I hope that that's been comprehensible, and I think the bit where I was reading out the script was a bit not very comprehensible. But anyway, so I suppose like there's always hope, if there's like clarity, and often like frustration, I think, can come out of, we're not really clear about what we should be doing or how to get beyond this problem of sort of like polemical dialogue between kind of entrenched groups working against each other. So yeah, I think this I, thou is a really helpful thing to keep bearing in mind, because thou, when we're speaking to a thou, it's like it's got to be this person who's, as Ratnaprabha says, is kind of, there's something kind of wondrous and magical about them that we're not treating them as an object, but there's all sorts of possibilities there in everybody, really. Once we stop treating them like objects, and we could, we see that. Well, we believe that all sorts of stuff is possible, because people are amazing, and they have all sorts of potentialities and stuff like that, and that's what we need to be thinking about when we're trying to communicate with them. So yeah, so that's it for today, and I think next week on Tuesday I'm going to go into the idea of integration. It's kind of similar in a way. It's a similar area, integrity, but we'll be looking at the something called papancha, So papancha means mental proliferation. So it's a bit like when we think of one thing and then it triggers us to think of something else and something else, and it's like we spread out like this. Pancha is 5, so it's like our mind keeps spreading out into, getting more and more dispersed and associative and all that. But what we really need is to be bringing things together, reflecting on our experience and trying to be like the one person, become one person with a coherent vision, we know what we're doing in life and what we're trying to achieve, and we're systematically working towards that, rather than this kind of like, we don't know what we're doing, we just keep spreading out and getting more distracted and all that sort of stuff. So this is what we're going to look at on Tuesday. Okay, thanks for the opportunity to talk about Buddhism and the Dharma, and have a good week, and I'll see you on Tuesday.